Hello, people of the internet, this is KaijuNoir.
And this is Deadpoolzilla.
And this is another episode of Kaiju's Corner. Now, for this particular episode, Deadpoolzilla came to me with the idea of making the topic of this particular episode about the recent announcement concerning Marvel's decision to somewhat reboot their continuity with this big event called Secret Wars, where supposedly they're kind of doing a Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they're combining multiple universes to make a more mainstream universe, shall we say.
Yeah.
I know, Deadpoolzilla, you recently made a video on this. So, what made you want to make another video, want to do another video where you discuss this current event?
Well, the reason why I wanted to bring it up again was because I feel like, and I'm pretty sure you felt like this way too, is when you heard the news, you're like, because here's the thing, I rewatched the whole announcement on Marvel's website, the Marvel YouTube channel, and they're very vague about calling it an absolute reboot, because it's literally the 616 universe, the main Marvel universe, merging with the Ultimate Universe.
Which is kind of like their mainstream universe 2.0, which it was kind of funny how when they initially created the Ultimate Marvel universe, it was like their way of rebooting the comics without actually rebooting the comics.
Yeah, and it was actually kind of inspired because DC, before they did the New 52, did this other universe called Wildstorm, which was a lot of characters that they made over at Image, but then brought them over because Jim Lee and a few other guys came back from Image to work at DC, and they took those characters they owned with them and made them into Wildstorm characters, made this universe. And Marvel looked at that and said, you know what? We'll do that too, but we'll use our characters, bitch.
And so I guess I'm assuming that's pretty much how Ultimate Marvel kind of began, really. And
yeah.
The Ultimate Marvel pretty much has gone on. It's funny how they made an entire continuity for the sole purpose of having new fans jump on as like a jumping on point to start all over again with like Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four _1s, and continue on from there. Except now, like 14, 15 years later, there's now like a huge amount of continuity to where it's like the initial purpose of the Ultimate Marvel universe has become null and void at this point.
Yeah. The other thing is too is that it's been very up and down in the Ultimate Universe, the writing. It started off strong, and then you could say that Ultimatum, that event happened, where they killed off, it was like Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
They just they ended up like killing off like, what, 2/3 of the superheroes in that world? Yeah.
Magneto dies, Wolverine dies, Cyclops dies, Quicksilver dies.
Wasp dies.
Yeah, she gets eaten by Blob, and then Blob gets eaten by Giant Man.
Uh-huh.
It's a very just sickening comic, you know? Hang on, 1 second.
All right.
Yeah, it is a very kind of sick, just a really, really sad comic. And then it started going a rise again. Then we had Death of Spider-Man, Death of Ultimate Spider-Man. Then we got Miles, probably the best thing to happen in the Ultimate Universe, and continuously the best thing, Miles Morales.
Unfortunately, I haven't read anything from Miles Morales about or concerning Miles Morales, but I have heard like there's really like strong positive word of mouth about that comic, and I think if I read this article correctly, the Miles Morales Spider-Man is the only ongoing series that is coming out of the Ultimate Marvel universe right now.
It's pretty much the only thing right now, and I feel like if that's the reason why you would want to merge the two universes together, just have Miles here, it feels a little over-excessive.
I can imagine like he's going to be in the universe with Peter Parker, and while Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Miles Morales is just going to be like Spider-Boy. I have a feeling that's what they're going to do with him. They're going to turn him into Spider-Boy.
Yeah. Well, the other things you have to look at throughout this you have to look at is that they said that when these two universes collide, some things will be gone forever. Some characters will be gone forever. And there are a lot of characters that I've really grown to love throughout, like especially the younger generation characters in the 616. I'm afraid they're all going to be wiped out. Like the Young Avengers, I'm afraid they may be wiped out of existence. And the whole merging of the two universes, I also feel like they may just get rid of Marvel Universe Nick Fury and replace him with Ultimate Nick Fury because that's the Nick Fury we have in the movies.
Right.
And Marvel is all about making it like the movies.
Yeah, because, they're making, like, huge bucks out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe franchise that, of course, a lot of people are being introduced to all of these characters through those films, so they want to bring more people into their comic books because, let's face it, the comic book industry isn't doing as well as it did, like, decades ago. And pretty much, like, the movies are doing so much, like, infinitely much more business-wise than the comic books themselves. So they wanted to just, like, try and conform in a way, just trying to make the comic book industry make it look like the movies. That way they can get all those people who like the movies and attract them into buying comics.
Yeah. So, the other thing you got to look at is that the other thing is that this may get a little confusing because the writer, Jonathan Hickman, is big on science fiction, and he's been building this up for like almost 2 years now, due to his Avengers and New Avengers run. Like,
with Secret Wars?
Yeah, with Secret Wars. If you were not reading Avengers and New Avengers by him, or Avengers World, you're going to get lost, because you need a roadmap to read his stories.
Now, when you mention New Avengers, you're talking about, like, that era where, like, Captain America and all the other the superheroes, they were kind of, like, on the run, and Norman Osborn was in charge and made the Dark Avengers?
That was a long time ago.
Okay. She was like, just yesterday I was just learning about that stuff, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this incarnation of New Avengers is brought together by Black Panther, and it's all these really smart characters called the Illuminati, and the whole thing behind them is that they've been trying to figure out how to keep the two universes from colliding.
Now, is this the same Illuminati that shot the Hulk into space?
Yes and no. They disbanded, and then Black Panther brought them together with a few new members, Beast being one of them.
Okay. It just shows how, like, I know some things here and there about, like, current events, but then again, my idea of what is current may be, like, something that's, like, 4 years old by now. But meanwhile, what is going on with the Hulk now, ever since World War Hulk?
He's now working for S.H.I.E.L.D.
As Bruce Banner, or, like, does he turn into the Hulk and goes on missions?
Banner gets to build stuff with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s permission, and then they get to use Hulk like a weapon of mass destruction.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And after Spider-Man, he went through, like, a whole lot of stuff, like Spider Island, and then, like, Spider-Verse, and then Superior Spider-Man, and then Spider-Verse.
Yeah, that's still going on, which you would think that would have made a lot more sense to bring this whole Secret Wars thing if you're doing the whole multiple universes.
Yeah, like, you think this would have been, like, the flashpoint of the reboot.
Well, I feel like I'm going to give this a little more credit because this has been built up if you read the Jonathan Hickman stuff. So it's not like the Flashpoint, which was meant to be just a Flash-centric event, but then Dan DiDio said, let's make it reboot the universe. Which comes out of nowhere, so at least this was built up rather than it just got thrown in at the last second, you know what I mean?
Right. And do you remember a couple months ago where Marvel started they were kind of trying to promote some big event that's going to happen, and they had, like, released these posters that said Marvel 2015, and one poster showed a picture of the Civil War event, and then they had another image of the 90s X-Men.
Well, it's been officially explained that what's going to happen is when the two universes merge, it's going to create like a melting pot that's going to create Battle World, which is all these separate universes split into different territories, and they're going to be warring it out with the other parts of the continent.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my brain out around this one. So universes collide, and some alternate pocket universe is invented?
Yeah, it's kind of like the melting pot that's going to create this new universe, apparently.
So it's like different versions of Wolverine are going to fight each other to see who will become the definitive Wolverine of the new reboot universe?
I guess that's the way I look at it. That's what I'm apparently taking away from this. You have the Planet Hulk territory, you have the Civil War territory, the Marvel Zombies territory. You have the 90s X-Men territory. You've got the Spider-Man Married to Mary Jane part of the universe.
Huh, seems awfully, overly complicated just to pick and choose. It's like, why pick and choose when we can write about picking and choosing?
Exactly. It's one big melting pot of all these different universes, so we're going to see like 5,000 Thors, 5,000 Wolverines. But there will be like only one Wolverine apparently at the end of this, and one Thor and one version of each of these characters.
And you're referring to Wolverine, not just like Wolverine and his family apparently, like his son and his clone X-23.
Yeah, which is weird because why they're doing this now is because Wolverine has died recently.
Right.
And they're
quote-unquote died.
Yeah, quote-unquote died. So they've been doing some really cool stuff, and it really sucks that a lot of runs are going to be cut down because there's a lot of new comics that have been coming out from Marvel that have been really just amazing, and now I feel like a lot of them are being cut down because of this reboot or reimagining or whatever the fuck you're calling it.
Right, kind of like what happened with like Batman Inc. How stories like those were just cut short before like the new reboot status quo is like was demanded by DC.
Yeah, and then it came back and it was totally convoluted.
Yeah, because now at that point you had no idea just like what was in continuity and what wasn't. Like I remember I was reading this story where apparently several like the Superman writer, he had a difficulty trying to write new Superman stories in the New 52 continuity because of the different mandates that DC would give him as to like whether or not he can use these characters or not. It's like he wanted to make a story involving like the Ma and Pa Kent. Unfortunately, the DC was like, no, you can't use those characters yet. We ourselves don't know what to do with it. And he was like, well, let me know what to do with it, with those characters. And like, yeah, we don't even know if they're even alive in this continuity. We haven't made that decision yet. And it was like, oh, come on.
And then it was decided that they're both dead.
Yeah, it's like, it's very convoluted. Like they kind of like I feel like a very half-assed reboot where it's like, yeah, even DC doesn't even know what to do with like half their characters that are not like the 52 superheroes that got their issue number ones.
And even then they were like, well, we're canceling that book.
Yeah, like at this point, like how many of those books are even still around like 3 years after the reboot?
Yeah, a lot of them were canceled, and even new ones that came out after to replace them were canceled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it's like looking back on it now, I guess most people are now looking at New 52 as like a failure of some kind.
Or, because the problem was they were half in, half out about it,
Yeah. Whereas with this new like Marvel reboot, do you think they'll be like going back to the beginning and just like do what Ultimate Marvel did and just go back to the origins of all these characters, or do you think they're going to do what New 52 did and they're have like already a pre-established status quo?
I think what's going to happen is, because here's the thing, they haven't really said, because I've been rewatching, like I said, they haven't really said it's a full-on reboot or not. So, like I said, either go all in or don't do it at all. But Andreas, I hate to burst the bubble here, but to the audience, but you and I don't read a lot of Marvel these days. I mean, I keep up with it. I keep up with what's going on.
And I barely do that.
Yeah, I was about to say, and it's clear you don't keep up with you're no offense.
None taken. Yeah.
Because we're more into another certain company that's booming right now.
Right, mostly because they happen to create several series involving our favorite fictional character.
Yeah, and IDW is just killing it right now with all the licensing they've been getting. Mm-hmm. And not to mention Image Comics, that thing that Todd McFarlane made that was just completely horrible. But now, the stuff that's coming out of Image recently is amazing, and plus it's cheaper.
And I'm assuming that like what the stuff that Image does, do they just do like newer characters, or do they still rely on those older characters they've had since like '92?
Well, they do have an Image universe for the Image superheroes, but there are like separate titles for. There's all like people can come in with creator-owned stuff and do their own thing that's not connected to the main Image universe that I don't even think is around anymore. I think it's just Spawn now.
Yeah. I guess with other companies like Image or IDW, they're able to make stories off of characters that either like are brand new or characters that are licensed characters that are still like potential for more stories there. Now, when you look at like the Marvel universe, they have so many characters that have been around since like the 40s, and this is like they've managed to surprisingly like manage to uphold this continuity of theirs for decades upon decades. And they would always do like that like that thing that comic book writers tend to do, where it's like where it's like, even though Spider-Man was created in the 60s, like Peter Parker became Spider-Man in the 60s, whenever like 20 years later, it's been 20 years later in real life, let's say, oh, he turned into Spider-Man during the 80s, you know what I mean? They always do like that soft reboot to avoid the characters like aging in real time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like the point I was trying to make was that these are characters that have been around for so long. It's like there has to you have to probably have gotten to the writers or the company themselves have probably gotten to a point where it's like, can they really continue making new stories within this continuity of theirs that's been like that has lasted as long as it have?
Yeah. I can see where they're coming from, because it's been going on for 75 years. You know?
Right, but my question is, like, is there still room to tell stories at this point without coming off as incredibly stupid, like One More Day?
I feel like, you can always go forward, I just feel like sometimes reboots can just be a step back unless they're absolutely necessary, like you see in some movies. But there are times where, a reboot can be necessary and work. Because obviously Crisis on Infinite Earths back in DC, that really helped DC after all the the pre-Crisis stuff was really convoluted and crazy. And
right.
then they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's the DC universe we all knew and grew up with.
Right.
So, and that proved, DC proved back in the 80s, 90s that a reboot could work.
True. But now, I don't know. Do you think that can still work in this day and age?
I think it can. I honestly think a reboot can work, but just you have to go all the way. You cannot be like, oh well, this is rebooted, but this is not.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think that they'll be able to reboot it without coming off as being Ultimate Universe 2.0?
That I can't answer. I don't know about that.
Because like I said, we've seen what a rebooted Marvel looked like back in like 2000, 2001.
Yeah. I just, I'm hopefully a lot of mistakes there have been mistakes in the 616 universe and Ultimate Universe, and hopefully this can rectify this, because again, they didn't use the word reboot at all in this conference, so you don't really know if this is going to be a reboot or, just another chapter in the Marvel Universe,
True, I guess. I don't know. Like, I feel like there's like a strong gut feeling that however this is going to turn out, it's just going to be like, I guess the most important question I'll be asking is like, what exactly are they doing that's new and still interesting and worth investing time and money into?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right. Because I know like what they're like, kind of like the direction they kind of went with New 52 was like, they kind of turned a lot of their characters into like unlikable assholes. Now I'm wondering like, what are they gonna do with Marvel? How are they gonna like tonally change or like shift or whatever in their case?
Yeah, that's that's going to be an interesting little venture. But to be honest, like I said, you and I feel like I'm not really fully invested. When I thought about it more, I was like, I'm not really invested in this. I mean, yeah, I keep up with the characters and I love what they do with them throughout stories. But like I've said before, I don't have the money to keep up with Marvel issue.
Right. I mean, I tried to do that with Godzilla, and even then, I got to a point where it's like, I'm going trades from now on.
Yeah, that's kind of the same way with me and Rulers of Earth, and because that's the thing. Like, I look at what.
Like, if I can't invest time in Godzilla, what makes you think I'm going to invest time in you, Spider-Man?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you look at what Image and IDW and Dynamite and several other independent companies. I feel like they look at readers and be like, "Oh, did Marvel and DC disappoint you again? Come here." Come here, read this issue of Ninja Turtles. Go.
Right. I had this idea and like this thing in the back of my head where it's like, oh yeah, funny thing is, like, I wasn't really upset at all, really, like, much like you. I had that revelation where it's like, I don't really care because I don't keep up with the comics or I don't read them anymore. And the reason why I didn't get upset at all, really, when I learned about the news was that no matter what, I'm always going to have that original 616 universe in, wherever I go. There's still going to, those, whatever specific version of Spider-Man or the X-Men or the Avengers you grew up with, they're always going to be there in trade form. Those stories that you liked are still going to exist. That relationship between Spider-Man and Mary Jane are still there. That probable future with Spider-Girl is still there. You can we can always go back and read all those stories that we grew up with, or all those stories we've enjoyed. I mean, sure, they won't be making any new stories based on those particular incarnations of those characters, but I don't know. I feel like what material is there is, I don't know, good enough for me personally.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and that's true. The other thing is, too, is that I do try to keep up with Marvel in some extent in trade form, but, like, Marvel trades are expensive as hell. I mean, IDW is also guilty of that, too.
Yeah, I mean, like, they would, I remember, what was it, I can't remember, there was, like, an earlier, I think it was, like, I want to say it was Ultimate Spider-Man #1. I had like, Volume 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man, and it had, like, a full story arc that was, like, 6 or 8 issues, I want to say. And nowadays, you've got, like, volumes that cover, like, maybe a quarter of an arc, of a story arc, and it only contains, like, 4 issues. Or even looking back at, like, older stories, like, let's say, Batman The Long Halloween, that's like 12 issues, a full like trade paperback of 12 issues for $20, and yet like something like Court of Owls would be like, I don't know, like 20, 25, 30 for like for less issues.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing, like I do try to keep up, like Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is amazing. That Hawkeye series he's been writing is pretty goddamn spectacular. And the other thing is that Marvel feels like it's trying to be like an indie comic these days. Like it's trying to be have these very independent comic feel these days.
Like how so? Like focusing on like lesser known characters?
No,
making like self-contained stories?
No, what I mean is the dialogue and the art styles and how some of the characters are written it feels more like something you'd see at modern day Image.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that trend will continue because I don't know, like it works for some characters like for Hawkeye, but it doesn't work for others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm kind of like I want to give this a chance, but 52 left such a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, I to be honest, all I ever read from New 52 was Court of Owls and Night of Owls.
Yeah, I actually own some New 52 trades, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Of I, Vampire, which was actually pretty good, and Frankenstein Agent of Shade, which was DC's equivalent to Hellboy.
Yeah.
And that was pretty good, too. And I actually, because this was a birthday present someone got for me by accident, because I should have been a little more specific, someone got me the Harley Quinn. My aunt got me the new 52 Harley Quinn first volume.
Yeah. I know my sister, she collected like the first couple of issues of New 52 Harley.
And
I haven't read them personally, but she seems to really dig them, because she's a huge fan of the character.
And I am too, and they did have like classic Harley in trades, and I was trying, and those were the ones I was talking about, but she got mixed up and picked. And
like that volume, what was it called? Preludes and Knock Knock Jokes?
Yeah, like that.
My sister has that too.
And here's the thing, like, she got me the new 52 Harley Quinn, which is pretty much Deadpool with boobs.
Uh-huh.
And that's not appealing at all. And I didn't want to be a jerk to, I didn't want to be a jerk and say, no,
that's the wrong version. God.
I'm like,
I asked for one simple thing.
Exactly.
But no, that's like the difficult thing about like the comic books, where it's like there's so many different versions. Like for someone who's not as familiar with it, how are they supposed to know?
Exactly. And I did, like, I've read through it. I mean, I didn't throw it in the garbage or anything. I still own the book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't blame my aunt for buying me this book. It was something she spent $30 on. I'm not going to say fuck off. I'm not going to say no to her for spending $30. I'm going to be grateful and keep it.
Of course. So, do you have anything left to say about this particular interesting turn of events with Marvel?
The only thing I have left to say is that Marvel, if this is going to be a true reboot, go all out. Don't half-ass it. Don't say, oh, it's a reboot, but there are some things that you still like in here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is either go all in or don't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've said throughout this entire conversation. And if this is not a reboot and some clever renumbering, then why did you get all the fans riled up?
Because pissed off fans riling up equals attention. Attention equals, like, money?
No, it equals media attention, which then equals popularity, which then equals profit? ?
Yeah, and for me, all I ask for is just make something that's interesting and worthwhile, and whatever you do, please give your writers a much easier time as to what the hell they're writing about.
Well, I feel like Marvel does that to begin with. Is that Marvel? I've heard no bad stories out of Marvel because you hear a lot of bad stories from writers out of getting bad experience from DC.
Mm-hmm. Or Todd McFarlane.
You don't hear anything like that from Marvel. Even when it was under Quesada, there wasn't a lot of bad people getting pissed off about it. I mean, yeah, there was a few things here and there, but especially these days, you don't hear people going, well, fuck the new guy, Axel Alonso, with the writers, or writers saying, I wanted to do this, but this didn't happen. I feel like the Marvel ship is sailing smoother. But that might change with mandates and all that if this really is a reboot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and all we can do is just wait and see what happens. So, that has been another episode of Kaiju's Corner. I have been your host, Andres Perez.
I've been your co-host, Deadpoolzilla.
And until next time, everybody, take care.